Hello and welcome to the East Lampeter Township Public Meeting. All participants are now informed that this meeting is being recorded. This meeting is also being offered virtually utilizing Zoom, which is a cloud-based platform for remote video and audio conferencing. The Zoom application is free to the public. The general public is therefore able to join the meeting by connection through the internet, calling in by phone. The public is also able to observe the meeting on the township's YouTube channel. Please continue to check the township website calendar for any updates related to these public meetings. Agendas for these public meetings will also be available on the township's website. Please be reminded that this meeting is being video and audio recorded and will be posted to the township's YouTube channel for viewing. The meeting will now proceed with the chairman calling the meeting to order and identifying all other members present in the meeting room and those joining the meeting via Zoom. The chairman will then confirm those members joining by Zoom can be heard.
Okay, thank you. Welcome to the East Lampeter Township Emergency Services Committee meeting for Thursday, November 20th, 2025. In attendance, in addition to myself, Mike Thornton, Supervisor, Paul Fisher, Jason Byler is online, Rob Patterson, Dave Gribble, Melanie McHenry is online. Mike Kramer's here, and Chad Englerth. Did we miss anybody online? Melanie, Jason, and Dave. Okay, good. And I'm sorry, it's Stephanie's. Sorry about that. There we go. Very good. Okay, you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag, States of America, and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The first order of business is the approval of our minutes, September 18th, regular meeting. Do we have a motion for those minutes to be accepted? Any discussion on the minutes, any corrections, any revisions or edits? Anything from the public? Hearing none, we'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? I think we heard one. No opposed, motion carries. All right, moving on to number 4 in our agenda items, old business. We'll go to the report for fire apparatus replacements. Let's start with hand in hand, engine 41-1.
I have no update.
Okay.
Status quo.
Okay, status quo. And Lafayette, ladder truck, anything new?
Nope, same thing here, kind of hurry up and wait.
Okay, Jason, thank you. All right, our subcommittee reports. I know we were talking about this at our last meeting, how we're going to go forward, but anything on public information, anything new?
Our next deadline is the 12th, if I understand correctly, and Brad has moved out of the area, so he's not as engaged in that role, so we may need to revisit who takes charge of the public information.
Thank you, Susie. Okay, finance. Must be our rep.
Yes, I'll speak on it.
Speak on that, okay?
So the finance subcommittee met and discussed the proposal that was put before the Board of Supervisors at their budget meeting for fire service tax. The finance committee came to I think 3-1 conclusion that fire service tax may be viable in the township. So we did take that back to the Board of Supervisors, and the Board of Supervisors has, at this point with the draft budget, determined not to move forward with the fire service tax, but to actually investigate it, to do some research, to look at other options for fire service tax as to whether that covers all of the township obligation, a portion of the township obligation, whether it covers only, and for what period of time it may cover. the proposal originally was 0.15 mils. And that was to cover township obligation for apparatus only. And then the discussion at the finance subcommittee was to cover all township obligation. That would be a 0.7 mils. Now that we looked out to 2048, I believe, which was exactly what the finance subcommittee had looked out for apparatus replacement. And so that would have needed a $1.2 million budget for a number of years. However, the finance subcommittee also reminded all of us that we are to revisit the apparatus replacement program every 5 years. And so one of the members of the Board of Supervisors indicated that maybe we need to look at a more shorter term, and when the apparatus replacement is revisited, look at whether or not a fire service tax should change at that point or be implemented at that point.
So I have this. So the police department's budget is 68% of our current budget. And when I look at for volunteer service, we are currently less than 6% of the current budget at what we are investing in a volunteer service. So we are forcing volunteers to continue having to raise money for daily operations to pay for apparatus, and an obligation when training responsibilities and liability are the most excessive than what they were in the past. So when you look at NIOSH reports of all fatal fires, which would come back to this committee if anybody ever got severely injured and or lost their life, it would come back to training records. And as investment into our volunteers, they shouldn't be having to raise money for operations or pay for apparatus when we're giving 68% of a budget to a police department that's essential to the township, which our fire department is essential to the township. So when I looked at a similar township, not in Lancaster County, but a very similar township in Chester County, West Whiteland, what they do, very similar population, about 2,000 short. They had an increase in population in 2020, which got them over to the point that we're at. They do invest in their fire department, and they also invest in people that are coming in for permits. We have an apartment complex that I brought up a concern about on Lincoln Highway, and we have that big apartment complex that's going in Greenland. We're bringing a lot of people that's going to utilize the services even more. So as a citizen, I can't put more pressure on my volunteer fire companies sitting on this committee and think it's okay that they have to do more to raise money to keep the lights on. We do give them a fair share, but is 6% of a budget enough for volunteers when we're fully funding our police department 68% of our budget? We're going to eventually be there. If the route we're going, we don't take care of them now, we will eventually be in the same boat with career firefighters, which will be in the same thing of 68% of our budget, when we could do something now and invest in a volunteer service and put some money up now that covers their budget. So they're not having to raise money that they can focus on training. If they want to do it and continually do it, that's on them. But it shouldn't be a main focus of getting fire apparatus out the door. That's a concern that I think if people really knew that that was going on and paid attention to a budget, I think they would have the same input on that.
So, Rob, I think that, eventually we are headed in that direction. And that was the reason I brought this up at the August budget meeting with the board. And then they said take it to the subcommittee of the finance committee here at PSC. However, it's not my decision. It's the board's decision. The board decided that there would not be a fire tax implemented for 2026. They did indicate that there would be further research by township staff and as to whether or not that fire tax should be implemented in a future year, what year that might be, and how that might happen, and to what degree.
I agree. But how long is this gonna take? We know. Right, and again, budget cycle again of a lopsided essential service. If we weren't investing almost 70% of the budget into one essential service, there's not much conversation we could have here. But we are lopsided in one essential service in this township. That's a concern I have.
Well, it's certainly been that way for a long time.
That we heard finance subcommittee as well, where there is a large contingent in a portion of the township that doesn't want a fire tax, doesn't want to lose volunteers, and believes, correct me if I'm wrong, anyone that was there, believes that if we move into a fire tax of any sort, volunteers will be lost, and we will jump faster to a paid service in firefighting than we currently have.
If I could just interject one thing on that. I think the other thing is, as a finance committee, we met, I don't know, 6 months ago or something, and we looked at the income statements and the balance sheet. And we did not see a pressing emergency that there was any, obviously, there's always a concern about, is there sufficient funding there to do what we need to do? But I don't think that committee reached the conclusion that, you've seen the recommendation they came back with and asked the supervisors to approve. And so I think, I'm not saying you're wrong, but I think you're making some assumptions that not everybody necessarily agrees with your perspective, I guess.
Well, I would challenge you to read every NIOSH report. And that's what, I am. My concern is that if a firefighter gets injured and or loses their life, it will come back to this committee. And the number one thing that gets pulled in every single report is training.
And that's fine, but again, training and finances are two related things, but they're not the same thing. I think we'd have to, this is more complicated than just simply a financial thing. I think if it'd be incumbent on the fire companies themselves to demonstrate, in fact, that if the lack of funding is encumbering the training, and if there's a clear, I think we're open to looking at that, but I think to just assert that that somehow there's a financial crisis coming and that's impacting our training currently, to me, it seems like.
So when you hold an event, it's an all day, multiple days event, correct?
Not all of them, some are.
So then I asked someone, I need you to go to a training a month later that is now all weekend. You took 1 weekend away from your family the week before to raise money, right?
Not, well, in a lot of cases, no, because in a lot of cases, these are not active firefighters that are doing the fundraising, so.
Yeah, but the other.
Okay, I can't speak for the other firefighters.
Paul, what you're missing is currently you're paying 68% for one essential service in this township. And what I'm saying is that we are only giving less than 6% to an essential service, whether I can't look at one fire department, I have to look at an entire township. And an entire township, is it fair for me if I go to Lafayette and I go to Whitmer and I go to Bronx and I go to you, and across the board, they can all tell me financially they are stable. They're not doing fundraisers to raise money for operations, to pay for apparatus. If I could have all four companies come to me and say that they are currently today not in that problem, and in 5 to 10 years they're not going to be in that problem. My goal today is to look at not today, but in a year from now, and in 5 years, that I'm not having to go with a paid department because we sat back too long and did nothing.
I understand that, but I would just counter that by saying we just did that. We did just sit here as four companies, looked at the financials, came to the conclusion that what we were asking the board for, the supervisors to support, was sufficient for what we needed. So, if we want to reconvene that and look at that again, we can do that. But I'm just, again, correct me if I'm wrong, the people that were on that committee, but I mean, I was part of that, and what I heard was that, again, that's what we got exactly what we asked for, and we asked for what we thought we needed to, sustain the fire company at this point. I mean, it's gonna be an ongoing, changing, moving target, but it has been for the 25 years that we've been doing this as an EFC. This has been an ongoing discussion. I don't think this is something that necessarily is new. And again, I'm not saying you're wrong, Rob. I'm not attacking what you're saying. I guess I think there's a counter argument to that too, which is that there is no crisis here and that we're actually doing, I think the township fire departments are actually doing very well when you look at the finances compared to most places, even including some that are being funded at more than six, what percentage of the township budget that should be? I mean, I don't know. I'm sure there's townships where there's less. I'm sure there's some that are more, what the right numbers, and frankly, what other townships are doing concerns me probably a lot less than what we're doing, or what are we doing what we need to be doing to protect our community and our township. And again, I think the finance committee came to the conclusion that we are at this point.
But I do think it's relevant because you found one that does something more, but there's plenty others that do far less than what East Lampeter does. Far less.
If I may, Rob, just for your presentation, my perspective of what you're saying, that percentage difference has existed for a long time because we have a volunteer service. It seems like you're saying, and this would be the forum to do that. I really think we need to look at this differently going forward. We really need to look at it differently. And Tara coming in as the manager has proposed, as we prepared for budgets at the end of the summer, we should look at a fire tax. Those reasons were tied to members that were being asked to do fundraising and that sort of thing. They weren't tied to financial crisis, but it was membership, getting enough people to invest in it and so forth. And we're listening to that. As we discussed a fire tax, we realize it's a big step. That's a big step. And we already are deficit spending, which is the other backdrop to this. So I can assure you that we're taking it very seriously and that, we're going to study it. And in August, we're going to be looking at it again. So I realize it might seem like, hey, you're kicking that can down, but this is the first time we've ever, since I've been here, we've been talking about it. And we're going to have 2 new board members, new perspectives. But I think your perspective, which I totally appreciate, is I think we really need as a township to see these other options. You found one that does it a little differently. We know some others around us that are doing differently. And how do you bridge this gap before it's like the wheels come off and now you're really going to be spending? Do I have your perspective?
Yeah, and the reason is that, we have billions of dollars on Lincoln Highway. And we're in a different perspective than a lot of other townships and or organizations. There's a lot of people that travel and that's only going to get worse. And with the building that's going on, I'm only giving you numbers that's produced federally and by the state of Pennsylvania at the rate of firefighters and you look at EMS, that people that are getting out of service. Do we provide what we can for the volunteers we have here? I proposed to the previous president that was of our supervisors that I thought that we should have a reimbursement of some sort back to volunteers, and he immediately threw that out. So, people are dedicating their time volunteering for our township, and according to the budget, there were some things that were, approved, and I'm not in the weeds with that, but I went through this budget fine tooth and comb, and there is a huge difference they are volunteers, and there should be more incentive put into the volunteer service in our township. We are very fortunate in this township, what we have. And when you look at what we invest back to them, like making them pay for apparatus, they're volunteers. We pay for the police department. We pay for all their vehicles, but yet a volunteer, we make them pay 20%. Like that's the little things. I could, break down every single part of this budget and go line by line and pick and where there's inefficiencies currently. That's not my goal. My goal is the minimal that I look through this budget and compare it to another essential service. There is a big difference. And just because they're volunteer, they should be treated any different than the police department, and there should be more investment into them. I have Susie that donates thousands of hours a year for public to get donations to 63. That if we lose Susie, those hours that she spends, that the incentive for her is to make her organization better. If we lose that, how do we replace that as a township? It's very clear their donations that they get, what the work that they've done and have come through the years has paid off. But yet, they're 6% of a budget. And that's the concern. If they lose they lose high, or they lose one of their major donations, looking at financial statements, they're in trouble. And do we address that then, or do we address it now? That's my point I'm trying to get across.
May I make a comment on this? I don't know if it's appropriate or not. But from the finance committee meeting that I attended, from that time period until we went to the budget, some of the facts and figures were different than what was presented in the finance subcommittee meeting. And for me, that's the biggest concern here in the discussion around the fire tax. I have the utmost faith in our township supervisors that they're going to study that and apply it in the appropriate way. But my biggest concern was that we had a discussion at length in that finance subcommittee meeting, but it was with different numbers than what were presented at the budget workshop. And so in the future, moving forward, I'm hopeful that there's some communication pathways that if the township supervisors kind of change the metrics, that the finance subcommittee could then be given those metrics to maybe weigh in differently. Because some of what I'm hearing conveyed is it's like 1 versus 3. Well, we have similar concerns as the one coming from Lafayette. So hand in hand, and Lafayette have similar concerns around possible loss of donations with a fire tax, possible loss of culture and membership and volunteerism in certain aspects. However, there's the right way to implement it. And so that's what I really appreciate about that budget workshop meeting is the township supervisor said, oh, I don't think we're quite there yet with understanding how we're going to implement this in the right way. And they're going to study it and hopefully bring it back so that it benefits us as a community more so than just any one single fire company. So moving forward, if there's a way to bridge that gap of communication when the figures change, I think that's super important.
Can you identify that a bit more? When you say the figures are different, which ones were you talking about?
Sure. So the options given to us in the finance subcommittee meeting were 5% as a arbitrary cap of how much taxes could be increased.
So you're talking about this latest finance committee meeting, talking about the fire tax?
Correct.
Okay.
And so we worked off of that 5% arbitrary number, which wasn't necessarily going to move the needle at all for the fire companies nor the township's deficit spending. So we were having that conversation at length and in circles. And so when you're having that conversation and the number changed to 10%, it makes a different overall tax of 10% versus the fire tax or a combination thereof. It makes a difference in the conversations that probably would have occurred in the subcommittee meeting. So when that was different in the budget workshop, that was a little surprising.
Terry, do you have a comment? I think
Yes.
there was.
What the board, the township staff was the maximum that should be looked at next meeting. And then we went forward with that.
Right.
And that's how we had to come to the EFC, and then how we had to come to the finance committee. And then when we got to the October budget workshop, we gave the board, here's what it looks like at 5% tax increase. Here's what it looks at like a 5% tax increase with a fire tax. And here's what it looks at 10% tax increase, and then 10% with a fire tax. And so that's, yes. Right. This township staff was 5% to draft the budget.
It makes sense. It just was valuable to at least give that like function so that we understood that was something that could be considered or that we could advocate for. So that was just a big learning from our perspective.
The only thing I have to add is what, on average, what does the fire departments get back for their membership drives percentage per household.
I think that's each of the fire.
Right. And that's something that's very important to the finance committee, because if you're operating at 30%, is that enough with what the township gives you to operate?
Well, I do think your perspective is a large one. You know, you're really looking from a vision that's, looking into the future, what's going to happen. I think people have an idea about that, Rob, but not to the point that you said it. So the fire tax is now on our agenda, and we are examining, and staff will help us find these examples of who's doing it, how are they implementing it, what are all the considerations, again, because it's a huge step for our township, and we're already increasing taxes because we are fighting a deficit, and we have to find a way to maintain the reserve balance that we have over the long haul. And we're being forced to make some tough decisions now.
Mike, if I could just put something in perspective real quick.
Sure.
Yeah, to Paul's point, financially right now, yes, we're not in a crisis. I think we're all on that same page. However, the crisis becomes down the road with manpower. Just this week we had 2 daytime calls. One call I think got out with 2, the other call with 3. And you look at the quality of the crew there, and you're dealing with 1 or 2 individuals over 65, possibly a junior, and 1 PAC qualified, decent interior firefighter. And that is just not going to be sustainable in the future. So whether it's in the context of a fire tax, there is going to be a reckoning at some point, and I think it's on the doorstep of we are going to have to deal with a staffing issue in some format, whether that's incentives, whether that's paid staff, whatever that may be. But I think it's going to be here sooner than a lot of us would like to admit. And as an organization, we're committed to staying volunteer as long as we possibly can. But we also need to be realistic that, there's going to come a day where we will have an incident that doesn't turn out well, to Rob's point, or we don't get out the door. And then you have to measure what is success when you say, well, we got a truck on the street. So just trying to keep that in perspective in the long term. There's definitely going to be a need there of some sort. What that looks like, we don't know, as we're committed to staying volunteer as long as we possibly can.
That's the subject of the other subcommittee, Human Resources and Volunteers. A good segue to that. Any comments to finish out finance?
Do some more research. I'll bring it back.
Okay, appreciate it. Okay, we'll move on then to Human Resources. Anything more specific we want to talk about in terms of volunteers and efforts to increase our volunteers?
The committee has not met in 6 months.
We got an issue there.
Yeah.
Or maybe we can get
I didn't think you
together.
wanted to participate anymore, so, but
Well, now,
just felt like participation level was dropping, lack of interest was there. So if there's interest, certainly, each one of us has the ability to reach out and get that back up and going.
We can look at those names again and contact, and Tara, we can talk about that, making a contact with them. So I think, Jason, again, what you're saying is big picture, right? And it's about ideas that can, more than just money, but help bring volunteers in. Am I right?
Correct. That they both go hand in hand.
Well, just so what I propose that if you would give tax credit for your property tax, which will give an average of $1,000. If you have 100 firefighters, that would equal $100,000. One paid person would equal $100,000. That was what I proposed to the president and the supervisors last year in a public forum. So if we invested $100,000 in the property owners that volunteered, that would go a long way to start and giving back. By not doing anything is where we're gonna get ourselves in trouble. The whole, we're taking people away from their families today, in addition to everyday other objectives. There's some that are very valuable, but I can probably tell you on average, it's like most professions, you have them for about 6 months. And then after 6 months, they make that decision, are they gonna continue or they not? And that's if things don't change. I mean, we had someone that was donating their time and the group that Susie's on it, he has now left the area and now we're back to square one with that. So that's what we're, unfortunately, that's what we're dealing with. And anything that's a volunteer service, and when it's essential and you're dealing with life and you're dealing with property, you have to put a priority to that. And unfortunately, I'm curious to see what the percentage per membership is of each organization, but I think that you're gonna find that it's not equal. There are some people like myself that always goes to all the volunteer things I can in the township to help the fire departments. There's others that don't, but yet someday they're gonna use the service.
Well, I think that's a topic, the tax credit idea is a topic for that committee. I really think that's how you flesh it out. You really dive in and get examples.
We struggled to get agreement in the, we discussed incentives, we discussed low staff options, we discussed,
Is this part of the finance committee or?
the PR,
So,
the Human Resources Committee discussed those things. And, it's,
Incentives.
yeah, and there's strong feelings in both directions, and it was kind of like spinning words around a room. So it was, yes, not really a valuable use of time if we're not in the room to be collaborative and find solutions. If we're only in there to say what works for each individual fire company, for me, that's not a good use of time.
So our focus here is for everyone, is for the township. That's our focus. So that's what we have to decide as a committee, is to focus on across the board, every fire department, what's gonna benefit the township residents. Because clearly, looking at financials, something's gonna need to be done. Or it's not gonna be sustainable.
so the recruitment and retention program, you guys just want us to focus on recruitment and retention, correct? Because what we were talking about was, what I thought was finance, like the finance committee should be talking about.
Well, so there's gonna be crossovers with finance when you're dealing with human resources. So if you're doing human resources and you're talking about incentive programs, you have to decide what is gonna recruit and retain your membership. And what does that look like at each one of our fire companies, because it's gonna be very different. All right, and then you take that to the finance committee and say, hey, this is what we come up with, is this reasonable to present? And so it does cross over, for sure, 100%.
Like, I can only compare this to EMS and, about every 30 days in the state of Pennsylvania, they're losing an EMS agency. So, being a part of that and seeing that every day, I know how vital this service is. I know being a township resident, it's very vital having the good fire department service we have, and I don't want to lose it. So being on a committee, I think it's my mission that, I would rather be proactive, and figure this out, because 6 months ago, a lot has changed. And looking at the state numbers as far as the fire service and, why did the governor just put multi-million dollars to Harrisburg Fire Department? There's a reason for that. But I want to make sure that our township fire department, we can all say we did what was right at the end and not have a 68-6 split for a budget line.
I don't know that split is something that's on the board's attention when we're discussing the big picture. You brought it today, but it's been that way for many years because it's a volunteer service. So it's going to be a lot less. We got to pay for the police. But I do think that what you're saying was something this committee started with the subcommittees, because that led to a new apparatus agreement. And that was the whole idea, was to, how can we improve that? And that was one of those those things that was produced. Now, I think we're looking at, hey, a fire tax might be another step to help improve, like you're saying. Hey, how can we just help improve, take some stress off, address the issues that we have? So we have, we have a new mandate, and I thank Tara for bringing that up as, a potential new piece of this township. It's not easy. People don't want to hear about a new tax.
Well, I guess if every,
And we have issues that some people were worried about. How's it going to negatively impact?
right, but if everybody donated to the membership 100%, we wouldn't be in this situation. The reality is that they don't. And when you're operating, when your reimbursement, your membership is your fund drive is low, then it's not equal. That's where I think we're losing sight is they've tried, they've done set memberships out, and I'm curious, like I said, I need the numbers before I can go any further, but that is a committee, that's what we focus on. Their fund drive is what helps them support themselves. And if it's a low number per household, that's why it's not sustainable. You can't sustain that over.
You're saying that's where the fire tax helps.
Well,
To even
that's
it
what
out.
we gotta get to, because they've tried to reach out to the membership, to everyone in the households in
Right.
their area, and if they're not getting the percent, it's a low percentage, and that explains why there's such a deficit, or why companies will struggle.
Well, it's on the study right now to look at for next year's budget. We did feel it was too soon to jump in that big step, but it's there. It's definitely there, so. Okay, any other comments? To that point,
So
Susan?
for human resources or recruitment and retention committee, I think it needs a driver. And I mean, Rob, I don't know if you have the time to do that, but I think it would help if it was somebody not actively participating in a fire company, in order to help make sure that it is looking out for the greater good of all 4 fire companies in the township, rather than us trying to regulate this, because mediating the space across the 4 different silos is
Tough.
not easy.
Stuff.
And you can see it in the room already. So I don't know if you'd be interested in helping to head that up, but that's some place where we can maybe have valid discussions about what does recruitment and retention look like in our township, being that we have very different personnel across the space.
You can do that.
We dipped into human resources, volunteers. Anything else anyone would like to mention in that? Been a part of that before? Okay. Online, anything online? We're good? All right, and next item, calendar activities.
Time I passed out the 2026 revised calendar. I gave you the 25 calendar so that you could look at what y'all were supposed to be doing. Let me know if there's changes. For instance, if Lafayette and Whitmer are going to continue to help at Greenfield activities, if we could just list those ahead, then you don't have to come back to the board each time for those. Anything else that you're planning to do, please list on there and email back that list to me. Thank you.
Okay. Moving on, item 5 in our agenda, new business, comprehensive plan.
So, trouble getting a quorum for a little while and didn't have enough folks to have the comprehensive plan consultant come here. So we met individually with each of the 4 fire companies. We had a list of approximately 30 questions, I would say, that each of the fire, I'm sorry, 27. Some had subparts.
Yes.
So we had a number of questions that we went through with each of the fire company representatives. We provided all of that to the consultant, and we are awaiting the recommendations from the consultant and the draft document. As of right now, it looks like the consultant will be recommending that the township move forward with a fire service study. And the reason being is that there is the lack of the number of volunteers. There is a need to look at whether or not there should be 4 fire companies in the township. And this is from their perspective, taking in all of the information that was gathered. Whether or not there should be a consolidation of apparatus, whether or not the fire stations are located in the right locations within the township, and how we financially move forward as a fire service as a whole.
So in terms of the preliminary feedback, you're hearing that
Yes.
to a degree, okay.
So, Mike, I'm just gonna ask this question that I always ask when it comes to a consultant. Is the township prepared for the results it's gonna have? That they're gonna make a change? Because there's a lot of townships that spend all this money in a consultant, which is, I know it's probably not gonna be cheap. And if they come back and changes need to be made, it's gonna cost more money. Is the township prepared that it's gonna follow through with the recommendations?
No,
Okay, so.
we don't know that we're going to do what
Right.
they ask us to do.
So then I'm gonna go back to, how much is this study gonna cost to do this? Do we have an idea to do the comprehensive service? Yes.
Answer right now.
Yeah, get a complete report. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, those questions will certainly be for us to consider, whatever.
I've been a part of way too many of these in townships and they waste a lot of, in my opinion, they waste a lot of money. They come back with information that some like, some don't, and it turns into a political nightmare and nothing really gets done with it. So I'm all for that. If we do this and recommendations are made, the township is willing to look at them because usually involves financials. So
I think it has a potential of bringing a lot of stuff, financial and otherwise. But it's good to examine things, take a time out and look at it. Doesn't mean, one way or another, but we'll see what the details tell us.
I know West Lampeter had it on their agenda back in May. They moved forward with it, but it was actually Tuesday to decide if they were going to or not. I have not called.
Okay.
From neighboring township.
Do you have any feel for how long of a process this might be, or, I mean, I guess contingent on findings, but is this like a 6-month thing, a year, 2 months? Or just depending?
We haven't seen the final draft version, full draft version of it, let alone delve into.
That specific area.
Right.
I think we could say, has one ever been done?
Fire service
Yeah,
here in East Lampeter
Yeah.
Township. Not that I know.
not that you're aware. Okay, there's a lot of questions to answer yet. Anything else? Comprehensive plan?
No, sir.
Okay, moving on to new business B, false alarm policy draft.
So, took a stab at drafting the false alarm policy, and Dave Keenes actually supplied some comments because he couldn't be here. We also had the township solicitor take a look at it. Now, the township solicitor had some major comments, and one was the fact that we should just alter the existing false alarm. Take out the quarterly requirement for billing, add in the yearly requirement for billing, and he also indicated, and I apologize, we got this right before the meeting. And she also indicated that we cannot put in a suspension of fire or police responses, that's a significant liability issue, which I think we all knew. But we can put in a suspension of an operator's occupancy. And there's numerous comments that she supplied as to who will be enforcing this, who has to maintain all of the attachments, who has to go after the individual businesses. So those are things we'll need to flesh out before we take this fully to board of supervisors for adoption. Hoping that we can work with the solicitor over the next month and get you a new draft in January.
For our January meeting.
Is there an annual subscription now for commercial alarms?
There is not a registration
No, it says an annual 50. So that would be a change.
that will change. There is no registration for alarm at this point in time.
The only question I have is, so when I look at this, I go down, we know for an ambulance to roll down for a call, it costs $350 to run that ambulance out on a phone call. When I'm running multiple apparatus to an automatic fire alarm for the third time, that comes at a cost. And I don't think $150 even comes close for the negligence of businesses that just doesn't fix their alarms. I think that's a get out of jail free card when you're looking at, again, this is a nuisance. That they'll pay that $150 because it's easier for them to pay than get it fixed. So I think these numbers need to really be evaluated. I'm okay with the first alarm, multiple reasons why that first alarm. Give me with an explanation they're gonna get it fixed. But moving forward, I think these are low. Just what it costs today, to replace apparatus. We're talking about a deficit. You're looking at fuel, apparatus, volunteers' time. Take that all into a dollar figure. This isn't covering anything.
Do you want that to happen where you see that number of false alarms in the calendar year now? You mean the increases that happen later, you want to see them happen earlier?
So when we're looking at, 150 for the third time that they're responding to that, it costs more than $150 to respond to that for the third time.
So I'm saying is you see the fourth and fifth and sixth, those increases are higher. Are you saying you want to see those higher ones earlier?
Yes.
So, well, you got 3 strikes, you're out kind of thing, but what are you thinking?
I would have to pen this to see what other local townships that are surrounding us that we're not,
Well, when we looked at the pattern of false alarms, I think one of the issues was getting it onto a calendar year. Is that right, Tara?
That's correct.
As we looked at it?
another one had 12. So
Also, one of the biggest problems, and I guess that would be my question, is what changes with this plan is, it's one thing to have the fines go up or whatever, but is there an enforcement mechanism? I think one of the bigger problems we had was some of them are racking up, I don't know, $1,000 bills or whatever, and they're not paying, and it's like, okay, well, now what? And nothing really happens. So I think that would be my question is, we can talk about raising it, but realistically, even if we raise it, if there's no real serious enforcement mechanism, I'm not sure that it's really going to change their behavior. So I guess that would be my question. Is there any changes? I see it talks about, things that, repeated failure to pay fines may result in additional legal fees as permitted under committee law. I guess not what does that look like? And what are you thinking there, like in terms of, is this something that the township would pursue more than it has in the past? Or, because if not, the numbers are kind of almost irrelevant to me, because if you're not going to collect it, whether you're not collecting 100.
Yes, so we did speak about this,
Okay.
and the fact that we have gone after only a number of repeat offenders because their numbers have increased to the point where we can actually recoup the funds and the legal fees through the process. And one of those was a 5-digit figure. So those are the ones where we will go after. There's others right now on a quarterly basis at $50 that's not getting paid. Those are not worthwhile going after. Well, it'll cost us more in legal fees and collection agency fees to go after them for $50. So you're right, there needs to be a trigger as to when we decide this.
And I guess increasing the fines could get you to that trigger point faster. So it could be a combination of the two, but I think that would be from my perspective, it's just, fines are great, but we don't collect them.
So one of the questions I posed back to the solicitor is how we can tie this policy in with the International Property Maintenance Code. And whether or not we can tie them together so that there's code violation.
Violation there's action that happens, I would assume, not just, slapping a wrist or a letter or whatever.
Yeah. Enforcement is definitely something we talked to staff about.
Right.
Good point.
Terry, I want to just fall back to the nuisance. I'd have to look up, forget which nuisance it was that I bought back over a year ago. But I'm pretty sure that now they have the right, it defines what nuisance is. They have the right to go and inspect the property, the zoning officer, they don't need to give them a notice anymore. Wouldn't this fall under that?
But this is written, this is not following what we have currently. So that's why the solicitor is saying we should use the current ordinance and change that versus writing a new.
Yeah, I would say update original. And tie this nuisance township ordinance that we were having in place, that we redefine that already. That would give us the right for the code enforcement officer to go and inspect it.
Well, it wouldn't be the nuisance ordinance, it would be the International Property Maintenance Code. So the International Property Maintenance Code covers all commercial properties and any renting. The nuisance ordinance covers grass and trash and, debris on your property, and that's used mostly for single family residences because the IPMC does not cover in this township single family. That was left out in the adoption through the board of supervisors.
Let me redefine that, because I think the nuisance ordinance that I challenged at the township level defines like excessive use of police and et cetera. That it gave the right where before we'd have to send them a letter. When we redefined that ordinance, it was, we don't have to give them a warning anymore, and we can show based off the Motel 6 incident.
That is the hotel nuisance.
Yeah.
That's not just the general nuisance.
Okay, all right,
The hotel nuisance.
because most of them that were violation of this ordinance was the hotels. So,
Different ordinance.
okay.
Sarah, do you have any idea on the current ordinance versus this draft, what the administrative burden is on the township?
Well, the last meeting, I raised that the system that the police use to track this can't track quarterly, so we had to bring that over to the side of the municipality, and so the billing person is actually tracking the fire alarms. And so those bills for third quarter just went out. But first and second quarter had gone out, and we had to revise the 2024 bills. Because the system can only track yearly in the police department. And the police department ordinance for firearms is written differently than the fire's. Although the chief is very interested in aligning them. And so are we, so that billing is just far easier. And we can stack the bills, right? Fire and police can all be on one bill. And then if the language for fines and penalties is the same, it can all be taken to the district justice in the same manner. So trying to align all of those as we move forward as well. And so the administrative burden is now on the admin side for the fire service false alarms.
One of the things I know in discussion internally of Lafayette, I know there was different conversations that took place, but I think the other concern of all this certainly is a health. Is really going to make a huge impact on what we see. I think, we had talked internally about possibly some sort of yearly or every 2-year third-party type inspection. What was the consensus on that?
Felt be quite an administrative burden to get and moving. And so moving forward with this, with a registration, we're likely going to have a third party manage this. We just don't have the staff to do this. So that's a cost that needs to be taken into consideration. Now, it's the hope that the fines pay for it, right? And so that the cost of that and that the registration fees in combination with fines pay for that service. But the thought was that there wouldn't be a yearly inspection until we see how this goes, see if we can manage this. I know there's consultants out there that do this. We don't know which one is the best one for us to use right now. And then maybe moving forward, we can look at an inspection.
My perspective isn't so much that it's the financial part. My perspective is that it decreases the nuisance calls on the fire department. Because if they start getting fines, and they keep escalating, the goal is that they'll either fix it or find some kind of other solution versus activating our fire department. We're not gonna fix this overnight, but if I can come in next year and say that the nuisance automatic fire alarms are down by 25%, that makes a big difference in multiple different aspects of the fire service.
But I also need to look at the financial perspective.
Yeah, that's right. It's not just financial, it's, we know there's multiple other issues that looks like we fixed, but
Yeah,
unfortunately.
what we want,
we fixed one part.
less false
Yeah.
alarms, for sure. And then our attorney's really gonna give us the feedback. We need to kind of put this in a document that we can all review ahead of time and talk about it in our January meeting.
Right, and Kim started with a document where that, I think was provided to us by someone on the committee actually, from Manheim Township. So we had thought we were starting from a good base and, come to find that through our solicitor, we should start with what we have so that we can actually more closely align with these and what we have.
Has there been any consideration, just looking at the numbers, saying, okay, this is what a registration fee is gonna bring in financially. This is what, if we implemented a yearly amount, this would bring in financially, and here's roughly what we think we'll get on alarms, to say, okay, what does that number look like? And is it worth at that point, would that fund a position, or would it fund some sort of part-time position, possibly within even, one of the fire departments?
We did not look at the policy, right?
Good point. That's gotta be a part of how we study it. Maybe this committee takes that on. Anything else on fire alarm policy?
Can I make a comment as a resident?
Yes, sir.
From an outside perspective, I agree that the first and second call them freebies, but your third should be a minimum what it costs for you to go out. I would think for our tax dollars they're essentially being wasted, especially with the strain that I'm hearing from the ESC. Additionally, I see you guys are trying to create a role, but the registration and renewals, I'd rather see that go to the 6%, rather than create something. Having the negative effects, I saw suspension, which doesn't make sense to me, but some of these false alarms at us building where they're on record, and could the township not be liable for that if they're not addressed? And if so, shouldn't that be addressed by a higher authority, by maybe removing it? As soon as you take their business away, they're gonna wanna fix this problem. I heard at the last meeting, there was 12, we were dancing around a specific place that had the problem. And it sounds like all your bad eggs are just in your hand here, rather than casting the broad net, kind of going top down, addressing the problem straight away. Because $100 is laughable. Just so residents who's paying the taxes as well. You guys are all in the thick of it. I appreciate every one of you and what you do for the township. So that's just, I'm doing this. Thank you for all.
No, I appreciate that.
Another perspective.
Okay, we can move on to item C under 5 tow policy. Right?
Chief took a stab at revising the non-preference towing policy. I think if you take a look at the definitions, you'll see that letter F was added, which is emergency towing service 2. And as you move through the document, get the chance to take a look at it before tonight, you'll see that, excuse me, that there were procedures in there that were added that separate service 1 and service 2. So being service one, that's your typical, let's say, vehicle can be handled by anyone on reference to. And your service two would be those that are able to have a hazmat cleanup or, smaller nature, but we're still going to have to contact Lebanon County Hazmat for significant issues. But those that can address hazmat issues that we may deal with on Route 30, Route 340. And then any larger vehicle, especially considering the tractor trailers that we have on the road in the. So that's where the tow list service two comes into play. Again, this is, I believe this is what the committee is for. And as soon as we have an agreement, this will go into place as a general order within the police department.
Who decides the list? The proposal.
So there's for service one, there's some specifications in the that determine whether or not we on. For service one, you have to have a facility within a township, and you have to meet the other specifications. For tow list two, the chief cannot get that.
The service list too, it has to be, it have to be for by the police department or.
By the police department.
It's like Steve Gribble really helped us with this piece of what's really practical and what's needed, but I do think police are still the ones on scene. Steve, you have something to add?
Well, I read over this. And there's still some gaps in this whole thing.
Okay.
The police don't always know. They look at something and it's like, who can handle this? Because lots of times they do not know.
So it's not their
And
question.
that's where, I've gotten and talked to them and we see what deal with certain ones that do the complete job. And some of this, you can't put a dollar cost on it. Because when even with your simple accidents, what you have rollover in there and you can charge so much. The thing is that rollover is 400 feet off the road. That's a whole different ballgame that you're dealing with. And with the larger trucks, vehicles, whatever. I've had them in the buildings. It's I'm concerned about the heavy stuff.
The number two, I think, that's my question.
This is like, then if I can speak to, just for the record, my name's Jared Nolan, Knowles Towing. I sent a letter to Tara, email to Tara. I don't know if it went anywhere, did any good or anything, but we actually have a location in East Lampeter. We looked at the list one or section one years ago, and it's not feasible for us to provide services on a light duty level based on the rates that the township has set. I have no idea why the township set rates. The state police does not set rates. hardly any townships, with the exception of major cities where they have wreck chasing problems, sets rates. So that's the first area of concern. I mean, you set rates that say we can only charge, I believe it's like $350 or whatever it is, to go out and clean up a crash that's in the road. But we also are required by law to do the cleanup. But nowhere does it say we're allowed to charge for that cleanup. So that's a major issue. The next question that I have is who follows up on these rates? Because I know for a fact, 2 of the companies on the list are producing bills upwards of $2,000 for vehicles towed by the township. So who's following up on these rates that are set?
The chief does follow up on those rates, and I can tell you one of those was already suspended.
Okay. Because the comment was made to us, well, we're just getting away with it. And if that's the way it is, like, that's kind of sad. But anyway, if I know there's a lot of issues with the towing in the township and delayed responses, the quality of services that are showing up, getting the roadways reopened quickly, until the township either removes the rates or comes to modern day rates of what's fair to be charged, you're not going to get quality services in the township. I mean, the fire departments are saying, you know, it costs them $350 to respond to a fire alarm. Well, now we're responding out, just for a rough number, we're responding out to an accident scene with the same expensive pieces of equipment that they are, not fire trucks, but tow trucks, paying our personnel, providing our own traffic control, doing spill cleanups, and township wants to cap what we can charge without taking any of that into consideration. So that's an issue.
Other townships that do that, do they leave it up to the tow company or do they, what's a ballpark?
Yeah, so the way the law is, the PA Towing Standards Storage Act requires that we have to post our rates in our office and on our website. And then that way, like the consumers, if they get our bill and they have questions on it, they can look at the bill and say, okay, this is what they charge. This is what their rates are. It's in line. At that point, if they find a discrepancy or feel that we overcharged or whatever, the state police actually refer them to the Attorney General's office. At which point the Attorney General's office will do an investigation and determine, did we overcharge? Did we charge for something we didn't do, etc.?
And Tara, right now, we do that internally with the police. You gave us one example where something was found to be amiss, so they were suspended. Can you give us any background on maybe when the last time we looked at these rates and where they come from?
The Board of Supervisors approved the rates, I believe, in 22. I believe it was 22. I would have to check that to be 100%.
Maybe in place for, they've been in place for some time.
Years. What is the average rate? So I have an idea.
Like an average light duty accident, very minor cleanup. If we're called out by the state police or any of the other local municipalities, we work with bills like $750 to $1,200.
Okay.
And the rate here is a third of that. Yeah, it's $300 for a crash vehicle. So we could potentially have to come out and the vehicle's in a ditch, it's still on its wheels, but it's in a ditch. So we have to lift it out of the ditch. We might have to clean up a fuel spill, an oil spill. You know, now we're talking a rotator, which is basically a crane to come out and lift it. We're talking a rollback, we're talking traffic control, plus we're talking spill cleanup, and we're capped at $300. That's, nobody in their right mind is gonna do that. And that's why your towing companies are writing invoices that are way over what your rates say they're allowed to charge.
It's been brought to the township that we know of before today.
I haven't heard it.
I only know of one company, and they were suspended recently.
You mean the issue though, that's
Yeah.
being brought up about the rates?
Well, that and a delay, I mean, from the fire side, have you guys seen any delays?
Yeah, I mean, I think the cap on the rates, has definitely given us some subpar towing companies in the township that, be nice to see it increase or taken off, for sure. I do know Knowles is a stand-up company, Wayne's, we've had no problems with. You know, you get what you pay for, and, I certainly would like to see it definitely opened up, for sure.
I would echo that sentiment from Lauren.
Seems like it should be a market-based system. I mean, why are we price controlling this thing? To me, that makes no sense, but I don't know what the best way is to get there, but it seems like obvious that any other service, you know, to try to set a fixed price is like, when you're talking about something that could be, you said anywhere from $300 or $400 up to $1,000 or more. I don't know who the expert is that's gonna make that call on every call. So I don't know if there's a way to move more towards a market-based price system, but that seems like it would be an obvious solution to me, but.
I mean, yeah, the cost of, tow trucks, what's the average, for a couple hundred thousand, probably?
Yeah, I mean, a rollback, you're 275, 300,000. That's just to tow a car. And then our rotators for recovering a tractor trailer, you're $1.5 million to $1.75 million just for one truck. And to go out and recover a tractor trailer, you're using 2, maybe 3, depending on the situation. So we're responding out with $3 to $4 million worth of equipment, and we're getting told we can charge peanuts.
At odd hours and California weather conditions.
Yeah.
Does that fall back to the customer or does that fall back to the township?
I mean, we have never built a township as far as like if they would call us out and we don't get paid, we're not gonna come back to the township. And that's something that could be very easily worded in your tow policy of like,
Well, I'm confused then why we have it spelled out that we came up with prices. I think we should come up with, township should come up with a list of who we think, or list of who we, tow companies that we, based off of their prices, would be best for the residents. But I don't understand why we're prices when they have to be published by the state.
I will have to look into the policy further because that has been established well before my time.
Yeah.
I know we looked into like 2009 area. We looked into getting on the light duty list, and even back then the rates were set and it wasn't worth it back then. And then as far as the Division 2 or the heavy duty stuff, there again, we're in the township. When we bought property in the township, we reached out to the police department, gave all of our equipment lists, our rates, everything. And we got a response, something along the lines of, we'll let our officers know, but we don't have a list, it's officer discretion. So that was basically, thanks for sending me an email, it's not going anywhere, is how we took it. We've maybe done a dozen heavy duty incidents in East Lampeter, and we're always the final call. That's been like, there was an incident involving a tractor trailer that was hauling chicken manure that was split open. And when I talked to the officer on the phone, he literally said, we've exhausted all of our options. We need you to come. Why, when you have services that can do everything, are you fooling around with services that are subpar?
That's what I want clarification on is, procedure 4, section D, the police chief or his designated will prepare and distribute non-preferential tow list. My first question is why, since we can't seem to get any answers. And 2, I think that's something that should come to the emergency committee for the fact of the police chief or the fire chief should have some input on that. They're the ones that are dealing with it. The second part I'm concerned about, is section 6, B, the police chief will review all applications. Within 30 days, again, doesn't come to this committee, which is again, the emergency committee to review, since they are a big part of this process.
If we did that, Ron, that would extend the waiting period for a company to come on to the list. Because this group only needs everyone. You're looking at 60+ days.
Right, but we've been dealing with this for years, and it seems like we have a lot of unanswered questions, so that's.
The state police have roughly a 6-month application period. So if you would say it's gonna take 60 days for your application to be reviewed, they're telling companies gonna raise an eyebrow about that.
Result with the go to the command officer on the scene because, no cop to the police force because they do a great job, but I believe the fire service has a little better handle on what equipment's needed to mitigate the situation. And I've seen it time and time again. So I would like to see the command officer a little bit more pullman into the decision making too, because at the end of the day, it's the time of our volunteers out on the incident as well. And if we're waiting for a subpar company to get the cavalry together for a couple of hours, that's time away from a lot of different things for our responders.
Well, not only that, it's an MCI, you're technically responsible for this, man, so you can't be going through a police officer to decide what kind of appropriate equipment are gonna be responded to a rescue. That's out of the scope of a police officer.
Well, I'd want to know their perspective on that before we made it. I don't want to know what the chief says and what feedback is. But to the point of selection, the emergency towing service 2 in there, Steve, just go back to your point where you thought there were gaps. I mean, that's certainly helpful with with the option of, I think it comes directly from what you gave us and some feedback that, the outfit has to be called that can handle the deal, handle what's happening.
We have, I'm gonna say 3 to 4 that handle the heavier stuff. Not all of them have the same equipment. I know one for a fact, and we've had them in calls, that they do not have a sweeper. They don't have this, they don't have that. They subcontract it out. One goes to a nursery and they have to bring equipment in. Another one has to go to 4 shops. Yeah. To come up with a good crew of people. The thing that you see this all falling back, that we are tying up Lincoln Highway, and I handle a highway. And it's atrocious out there. And the one thing is, and I've known Jared, but I knew his father all the time too, that they have improved their business with just bringing up a vehicle that does traffic control. I can call in and say, here's what I got, or I spend $8. In comes their spill truck, maybe 2 rotators and this and that. And they show up and they're there and they're ready to go. They've actually relieved us of being on the call. Because some of those calls take, you could be out there 2.5 hours with some of that. I can't afford to have a fire truck sitting there. Because we have enough call, we need the help, we need it immediately.
The wording that there is no wiggle, if you're going off this procedure that's currently written, there's no wiggle room for a fire chief to make a clinical decision. Literally, when it comes to a motor vehicle accident involved in traffic or any kind of specially operated piece, that falls back to the fire chief. And the way this is currently written, it does not give the fire chief any wiggle room to make that decision.
The only time that I have called directly at an accident was when I made it very clear to county control. I need this company to bring a rotator for their rescue part. Spelled it out, point blank, that way I didn't get anyone upset, but I was overdoing boundaries that I deal with. And I can tell you, I had the people there immediately. It makes a big difference. And just the quality of people that you're dealing with.
So that's the unfortunate part. The way this is written is it's written 20 years ago. And the reality is if you have two major incidents, you are gridlocking a fire officer making a clinical decision, the way this policy is currently written. Because they have no jurisdiction in this policy to call for a tow, the way it's written.
To Rob's point, if you have an incident like that under the NIMS National Incident Management System, at that point, till the rescue is complete.
Correct.
Think about it, some of the companies have, I'm gonna call it the auxiliary pieces. It could be, we need another flatbed to come in because the load is shifted. And you need to take it from one piece to another because they've had a twisted axle or something like that. And it's something that I can, at least as a fire chief, because I used to do rigging and stuff like that. And you can take a look and say, we've got a problem here. And it's gonna take more than just a heavy wrecker, because they've got to put that equipment or material on another truck. And not all of them have an extra truck sitting there ready to bring out. I could go examples and examples and examples, and that's not what I'm trying to do here. It just, there's lots of times we have, and it's like Mike said, we have new officers that they're overwhelmed sometimes.
Yeah.
And we try to work with them and help them, that they're comfortable, that we're not trying to step on their toes, but look, here's what we've got, guys. And, yes, they're being paid and they can be there all day. I don't care. I'm concerned about our people. And it's like you say, getting them back to work, getting off the highway and.
Okay, so is the issue the in procedure, the consulting, police and fire?
The first thing we do, that I do, or my officers, is we go to the officer that shows up at that call. It's like, they have a lot to do immediately. Okay, they're trying to do this and that.
Right.
But lots of times we're giving the number of injuries and updates and things like that. The thing that we want to be able to do is go to that officer and say, I'm gonna need a heavy, a rotator, I'm gonna need this or that.
Right.
They handle this. And sometimes it's like, okay, I'll get to it. But it just prolongs the,
Yeah.
and I went to work with our police and explain and show them why. And the day that Jared talked about the chicken waste, I looked at that and it's like, man, I was making phone calls and sending pictures.
Yeah.
And it was taken care of.
It sounds like we could have all the kind of procedures you want in the world. And if an officer is busy doing something and they say, okay, I'm gonna get to that, that's really not the issue. The issue is making sure the police and the fire are together, knowing what resources are there. Now we have another option. At least we're trying to tool the police officer to say, you do have another option to go to another towing provider because of the circumstances.
And that day we had to, because we had a truck full of stone. And one tow company worked on that truck alone.
So if we would put that in the fire incident commander in coordination with the officer, would that cover that? So in coordination with the officer and the fire incident commander that's seen, you decide the appropriate resources for that.
I'd like to ask the question of the somewhere along the line that the chief of police is, you know, what their position is or what their thought process is. Is there any real reason not to have the commanding officer in the fire department make that call? I guess I'd like to hear from their perspective, what would be wrong with that? Like, are we missing something here? Like, what would the chief be doing that the fire chief be doing? I would, you know, give me an example where he would call the tow truck and the police officer would be like, no, I don't want that. Like, that's the wrong way to do it. I guess I don't even quite understand why they would really care. And that might just be because I'm missing what, you know, I don't know what the conversations are like. It just seems like they wouldn't really like.
Just wanna,
And obviously, if they can do it, enjoy it, that's.
right, and just want to get it taken care of.
It seems backwards to have to give that sole authority to the police officer and remove the commanding officer from the fire company out of that decision process, which is, you know, what.
Put it this way, there could be a time that I mean, you can have a truck down off the roadway and
We should make that.
because it's sitting there.
Like, would it have to be exclusive police and or fire? Couldn't it be, like Rob said, something to the effect that, you know, between the two of them, they decide to call somebody, but.
Yeah, I think you're making great points. We need talk to chief about this, and I mean, I can't believe they wouldn't want that. I mean, I know there's a lot, and I've heard a couple times us say, well, a new officer, an inexperienced person. I'm sure that's an issue, just like an inexperienced firefighter. You could have to say, you need advice, you need people to be able to consult and do that. So I would suggest that Tara, that we definitely bring chief into it and examine the policy. I think the other pieces
I mean,
too.
I've gone up to officers, said, hey, I'm gonna make a suggestion to you, this is what we're gonna need,
Yeah,
and they've listened to it.
yeah,
You know, it's how you approach it,
yeah.
but.
But the way this is, they don't have to, and that's what we have to fix. We're fixing a ordinance, so we have to make sure that the ordinance that we're fixing is in line with what's best for the township, and that's having one side of this, they're looking at NIMS and looking at ICS, the true violation of that. So that's what we have to adjust.
So the best, you know, that situation is gonna be best for the incident, best for the volunteer service who are, hey, we gotta get back to work, and, you know, it has to be practical, the safety's first. Yeah. Yeah.
Just good
And
job.
then the second thing about rates can also be something that we can talk about and do some research. I appreciate your feedback on that. Anything else on this policy? We got some homework to do. Close that. That's gonna take us a little bit, and I appreciate that discussion. So we'll go into polling, just business that we have to report. We'll start with Tara from Township.
So we have ESC terms ending for the township. Like, your term ends, Anthony, your term ends at the end of this year. For Hand in Hand, Don Boyer's term and John Petersheim's term ends. For Ronks, Nate Church and Melanie McHenry. For Whitmer, Mike Creamer. Lafayette, Jason Byler. So please get me names or the fact that you'd like those folks in the positions reappointed.
What soon's our deadline for that or what?
5, they are all reappointed at the January reorganization meeting, which is January 5th. So, quite honestly, I need that by December 19th.
Tara, will that be a reminder email sent out to everybody?
Can send that out.
Yes.
The other item that's on my list is the Willow Road culvert. So this is the culvert that is directly in front of Oscar's Pet Resort that is being replaced. That project is slated to start in January. That is slated to be completed in April with paving. That's a closed road situation for 3 months. That's all I have for tonight.
Is there any other preparations then, specifically we make for that road closure and what the fire companies will be doing? I mean, do they manage that on their own or do they?
Yeah, those signs will go out for the
Yeah.
general public and all
Okay.
of that will happen,
Okay.
absolutely.
Okay. Let's go around the horn. Fire companies, how about Whitman?
October 4th, we are at the ELT Fall Fest event down at the Township Park. In a fire truck there along with Lafayette. The 10th of October, we had Fall Fest in our firehouse, put on by our support members. We had a really good turnout. They were happy about it. The 18th of October, we had the Ox Roast. We sold out 2,861 meals. October 14th, we had Child Protect. The 29th, we have the blood drive. To the 29th, we had the blood drive. November 8th, we had line dancing. We had about 80 or so folks turn out for that. It was a nice evening. A lot of fun was had by all. Coming up here, we have Milk December 6th. That's from 6 to 8:30 at our firehouse. And December 9th is Child Protect again. And also our new DD vehicle came in a couple weeks ago. We were ahead of schedule. We weren't expecting it so quick. So we're just scrambling to get the rest of the upfitting stuff ordered and getting the lettering finalized and hope to have it in service by early January.
Great, ahead of time. It's great.
Yeah, we couldn't believe it.
Wow.
That's all I got.
Okay, Lafayette.
A couple of administrative things here. We are actually currently evaluating a major revamp to our membership requirements for 2026. And getting we've had several sessions for member feedback and input. Additionally, we said, well, you got to make X number of calls, certain percentage of meetings, et cetera, et cetera. Really trying to come up with some creative ways to be able to down to the voting requirements as well, just kind of meet people where they're at in today's society with the amount of time they have to give. Because we have some members that have the ability to give time certain chunks of the day, or even on the administrative time, hey, they may not be able to show up to a lot of stuff, but they can carry out a brunt of the work remotely. So really just looking at mainly more an hours of service model. As we go forward with that, we're looking to implement for 2026 with, we've had some great member feedback on that. Of course, we're getting into election season and I wanted to just kind of make a note here, not a new issue, but we've had quite a bit of struggles to get people to serve on the executive board. We had a lot of influx of administrative members actually who have been very active and supportive, but we're finding that a lot of them don't necessarily want to step into those roles. So, just something to keep in mind in the future. It's not just on the fire side, it's on the administrative side as well. And then certainly those admin members have been a huge boost to a lot of what we're able to do. So just something I felt worth mentioning here as we're talking about human resources and things of that nature. Fundraisers extra give us tomorrow. And we did have our steak cook-off. It was later this year due to the fact that the normal date we had got booked up with their slate of events across the country. So it turned out about a $3,000 plus profit from that. So it was not quite as well attended with it being so late in the cook-off season, so to speak. Capital campaign continues to move forward, getting a lot of good traction there. Probably at a meeting some point next year, we'll provide a little bit more of an actual dollars and donors update at that point. Then our holiday fund drive is ready to go out. Operationally, we are hosting the training in conjunction with Whitmer, bringing in a guy by the name of Rick Lasky on June 10th. That's what's up?
January 10th.
I'm sorry, January 10th. I wish it was June. Also have continuing to try and evaluate in-house training classes because for whatever reason it is still and it seems to continue to get worse as far as finding the availability of the classes up at the Public Safety Training Center. With that note, kind of not specific to Lafayette, but thought it was rather interesting. We just got information this week. We talk about getting new fire members in the door and what's it cost to get them up and running. They have now revamped for 2026. They're essentially what we used to, in the old days, call the essentials of firefighting. They now have it broken into essentially support firefighter and firefighter one. And interestingly enough, when you combine the cost of those two classes going forward, you're looking at $4,000 to basically have somebody training to now be able to say, okay, they're a fully functioning, PAC qualified interior firefighter. So I think that's something of note. We were talking about increased costs earlier. The LCFA is kicking in some money for you. They'll have to front the money up front, and then, you know, how long is that program going to run? When will the money run out? That's a lot of unknowns. So that's a little band-aid to the situation, but you know, training costs continue to increase. Additionally, with that, just as a side note, our call volume is up quite a bit this year. We're probably going to push 650 to 700, which will probably be an all-time high.
What was last year?
I believe we're at 620 something last year. Upcoming events, of course, we got the Extra Give tomorrow. We'll be participating at the Highs winter event there in Greenfield, December 4th, and then our usual annual Take Santa Out in the fire truck on December 13th.
Okay. How about Ross, Dave?
The only thing we have going on right now is we're working on a replacement of the portable radios for the new phase 2. Dad's been working on that. I believe Lafayette is still involved with that bulk purchase, and there are some other fire companies involved from outside the township, which hopefully will help lower the cost per unit for that. But that process is still moving on, and hopefully will be taken care of shortly.
Okay. And hand in hand.
Yeah, we're working, having our radios replaced as well, working through the process, trying to figure out what the best choices are to do that. So that's a project we're working on. Another project we're still working on that probably have some results here fairly soon is replacing our old Squad 2. I talked about before with a new traffic control unit. And then the other thing is one of our HVAC roof systems died. So if you guys went by today and seen a crane up there hoisting something up on the roof, that's what it was. So hopefully the heat's working again. But other than that, a little bit of a quiet time of the year, no fundraisers going on right now. So I think that's all I have.
Okay. Where do you see representatives? So our citizen members, anything from our citizen members?
I
do
not.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to bring up if we'd be okay with it. We had a drowning pediatric patient at one of the hotels back in the summertime. He did make it through, was discharged from Hershey Medical Center a couple days later. We'd be okay with it. I'd like to give out the accommodations at this meeting, if that would be okay, to 63 providers that were involved with it. And also, I could try to see if I can get the patient here, if that would be okay.
Something we can coordinate, Tara.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Were you thinking January meeting? Were you thinking?
January, yeah, if you're okay with that.
Yeah. Okay. Public comment time. Anything we haven't talked about? Any new pieces? Might be an introduction, Susie, on an idea that's out there.
Sure. Yeah, so based on the work that we've been doing and collaborating on here in East San Peter and the fire company, it was recognized by Steinman Institute for Civic Engagement of the work that this particular body is doing and the work that our volunteer fire company, how engaged they are in the community. And they're recognizing that maybe the newspaper isn't long for the world as far as the future of informed and engaged communities. And they recognize and appreciate the value that volunteer fire companies provide as a center for community. And so they have been looking at long-term solutions, and we got lucky enough as CB, Conestoga Valley area, so not just us, but also Upper Laycock and Lucero, to be a pilot program for a online space that would help to build community, much like a social media app, but not with all the algorithms and humanly stewarded. So it'll be called Roundabout CV. And it's hosted by a nonprofit called New Public. And if you're okay with it, I would pass this information along through the email chain, but allow for these fire companies to be beta users. It's being built actively now. So we get to create the space that we wish to see that may help with a lot of the communications and adapting to the way people communicate in modern society. So if you have questions, I'm involved with it just to help steward community for what we're doing, but just wanted to recognize and appreciate on behalf of the folks that are helping to fund behind the scenes, that this space is here for us because of the work that's been seen that we're doing. So kudos to all of you.
There's a lot of possibilities, I think, absolutely with fire companies and absolutely the township in general, different programs we have, but yeah, be interesting with updates on that, see how you go. Yeah, thanks, Susie. Anything else from the public? I'll take a motion to adjourn. So, second. All in favor? Any opposed? We are closed, thank you. See you in January. Happy holidays, everyone.